You want to put stacks in if they want to take them. Everyone, please, can we have your attention? Hello. All right. Well, we got a little crowd here tonight. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeremy Zelwin. I'm the Ward 3 Council representative. And we're having a town hall tonight on ballot issue 110. But before we get into the agenda, I just wanted to send a huge thanks to David Pellig for helping set up this room. For those of you who've ever been at a Soul and Rec facility or a high school sporting event, you know Coach. Coach has gone above and beyond helping get this organized on Thursday night after he coached a soccer game earlier today. So just want to say thanks to Coach for helping out tonight and all that you do. So I apologize, those of you that can't see the screen. We didn't know we'd have this many people here. But recently, there's been a lot of news out there on ballot issue 110, which is a rezoning on Bainbridge Road. So there's lots of information out there. Some of it is factual, some of it's not factual. A lot of people have opinions. There are a lot of people that have strong feelings for it, strong feelings against it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to host a town hall. This is one of the most complex rezoning items that has come, ballot issues that has come in front of the city. So I wanted to extend an invitation to the developer. I wanted to extend an invitation for the residents for reasonable zoning. And I wanted to walk through what the ballot language really means. So that's the purpose of tonight. Unfortunately, the developer declined the invitation. So I will not be answering any questions on the developer. When we get to the question and answer session, please don't ask any questions that the developer has to answer, because you're not going to get an answer tonight because he's not here. He is hosting a town hall or an event at his place on October 7th. I'm sure he will answer questions there. But really tonight, what I wanted to do is walk through what the ballot language is and what it means, and talk about what is allowed, what is not allowed, if this rezoning is to go through. So on the agenda, this is our agenda this evening. This is, when I'm talking, we're just talking facts. I'm just trying to make the voters more informed on what exactly this ballot item means. So also want to do some introductions. My fellow council people that are here: Nancy Meany, Bill Russo, Bob Shimitz, Mark Katora, and Bob Palunas. I don't know if you guys want to stand and wave. Doug McGill could not make it. Doug's out of town. The mayor's here. Eddie, if you want to wave. The mayor's here. If anyone wants to ask the mayor a question at the end when we get to questions or comments, please feel free to ask the mayor questions. Bill Mazur's here from the Planning Commission as well. The other two people from the Planning Commission, Mackie Bentley and Roger Newberry, may be showing up late. They had conflicts with work, so hopefully they're able to make it, but I know that they're very familiar with the rezoning amendment. Also, then we're going to walk through, the presentation may get very dry when I'm walking through the zoning language. So it's really zoning language that would go into the city's zoning code. So it's going to get dry, but I'm going to try to make it as upbeat as possible for everyone and make it clear for everyone here. And like I said, I invited the developer to speak, but he's not here. But there's a group of residents out there, the Residents for Reasonable Zoning. I also extended an invitation to them. Bud Thomas is going to speak on their behalf. And when Bud is talking, Bud is speaking for the residents of rezoning or reasonable zoning. He's not speaking on my behalf. He's not speaking on anyone from council's behalf. He's speaking on the political action committee against this. But again, I attempted to put together an open forum, but this is where we are. And then we'll open for questions. And when we have questions, we're going to try to keep this very civil and organized. There's a microphone in the back We're going to treat it like a city council meeting, so when you go to the microphone to ask a question or make a comment, state your name, state your address, and then we'll have 5 minutes to talk just like a council meeting. So, what is on the ballot? So this came directly from the Board of Elections. So this is the direct ballot language. So it's saying if it's a majority affirmative vote is required for passage, and then shall the zoning map and the zoning code of City of Solon be amended to add chapter 127-201 to create the new KLMUD, the Kareem Lake Mixed Use Development District. So that's the purpose of this presentation, is to walk through that zoning language so everyone knows what can and cannot go on the piece of property. And then you're going to vote yes or no on if you want the zoning to be enacted and passed, or no if you don't want that zoning in the city. So where is permanent parcel 995-18-043? So I think I got a laser. The laser pointer doesn't work. So this is the center of town here. Oh, it was working. Oh, okay, here we go. So this is the center of town. Right here is the Marks Shopping Plaza. And then this is Bainbridge Road right here and Liberty Road. And then right here on this dot is the property. So that's 39350 Bainbridge Road. There are high tension wires on this side here, and then the Thornberry subdivision here, and then 43 is right here. So we're talking about this piece of property right here. So issue 110, if passed, you're voting on a new zoning district. So like I said, it's the KLMUD, the Kareem Lake Mixed Use zoning to be created. We're not voting on a site plan, we're just voting for uses on a piece of property. And we're going to walk through in detail what's permitted, what's not permitted, and all sorts of zoning language here. But inside that one piece of property, they're looking to create 3 subdivisions. I will show you where those subdivisions are on the piece of property. I've got another map here. I'm a visual person, so hopefully some of you are as well. So you'll see where the different zoning divisions are. Another important note, so currently this piece of property is zoned for R1D residential. So that's single family residential on 1 acre properties. You can also put churches, synagogues, temples, and other places of worship. You can put federal, state, and local government buildings and uses, a public or private golf course, but not a driving range or miniature golf, and any other use substantially similar as deemed by the city. So now we're going to get into the zoning language. So when you're looking at the slide, what I've done, I'm going to use another visual aid. So they've created a zoning code, right? And all of the information here, we'll make sure is posted on the city website. I'll also be posting it on my Facebook page, and I'll put it on Nextdoor for everyone. But when you see the slides, and then there's a number next to on the title, that's a direct reference from their zoning. So this text, starting on this slide, anytime you see a number on the title, is a direct pull from their zoning. So this isn't the city's language, this is just direct from the developer and his zoning classification. So he's saying the purpose of the Kareem Lake Mixed Use Development is to recognize the unique characteristics of the subject site, which is situated on the south side of Bainbridge Road in Solon, and there's a lot west of the Thornberry subdivision on permanent parcel 995-18-043 for a variety of residential and low-intensity commercial uses that complement the site's characteristics and adjacent property. So, one disclaimer, the map overlay is not in the zoning code that was created outside of it, but the picture to the left is. So I just want to be completely transparent here. So the establishment of KLMUD. So the boundaries, here we go. So inside of this mixed-use development, which these are the boundaries, there would be 3 subdivisions within it. So KLMUD1 is one subdivision, which would be this area to the west of the lake, and this area to the east of the lake, as well as at the backside of the lake. And then KLMUD2 is this area right here on the north side of the lake, and then KLMUD3, which primarily is the lake. So the zoning code is going to create 3 zones, if passed, within that piece of property. So the next section is use regulations. So it's nice they have a table that goes along. So if the zoning's passed, this is what may, which shall, which can be put on this piece of property. It doesn't necessarily mean that every one of these things will be on the piece of property, but if the zoning's passed, the rezoning will allow these uses. So we'll start with the area to the south and east and west of the lake, right? So that was the KLMUD1. So if this zoning is enacted and passed, there are permitted uses. So you could have a single family detached home in both subarea A and subarea B. You can have single family dwellings that are attached, such as townhomes in both of those areas. You can have multifamily dwellings. So that would include a condominium, apartment buildings. I think on the next slide it would say adult senior living facility. And then, that's the next one here. So on the west side of the lake, you could put a senior living facility. And then now we're going to switch to the north side of the lake, the part that's closest to Bainbridge Road. So closest to Bainbridge Road, you could have a boutique hotel, and that's going to be pursuant to subsection 127-201-03D. And all of these have subsections, and we're going to go through that detail here in a little bit. You could have other retail uses. You could have outdoor displays, outdoor dinings. You can have a winery and a spa. So a couple things, there's some footnotes here and some small text. So there's also additional detail. So it says that the single family attached dwellings will have a ground floor entrance directly with each dwelling from the outside extending from the ground to the roof with no dwellings on top of each other. So they're really talking like a townhome with dwellings that are attached side by side with a wall, but not on top of each other. And then it says for the multifamily dwellings, they're permitted in subarea B pursuant to another section here in the related notes, and we'll get to that coming up here in a second. So those were the primary uses of the piece of property. Now we're going to get into the accessory uses. So again, we're going to start with the east, west, and south of the lake, and then go towards where the winery, spa, and hotel is on the north side first. And again, I apologize, this is very dry because we're reading zoning code here. So accessory uses for KLMUD1, you could have off-street parking and related access. You can have an above-ground parking structure, below-ground parking, pedestrian walkways, trails, gazebos, patios, sitting areas, fences, signs, trash enclosures, a gatehouse, a pool house, and a maintenance building. And I guess you can have all of those. All of those are permitted everywhere except, I should note, the above-ground parking structure is only included in subsection A, which I believe was on the west side of the lake. So everywhere else, everything's allowed as an accessory use. So there's also some footnotes here. The parking structures for the above ground, it says that above ground parking structure is a structure providing 4 or more parking spaces accessory to multifamily dwellings or commercial use and distinct from residential garages. And then there's another footnote next to the below-ground parking structure, and it says any underground parking should be covered with grass, ground cover, or any other natural vegetation from the maximum building and site coverage limitations. So they're saying if there is underground parking, they're going to try to put grass or vegetation on top of that. So continuing on use regulations, there's details on the senior living facility, the boutique hotel. So the senior living facility may include independent living, licensed assisted living, and/or licensed skilled nursing care. So that's the whole gamut of senior living, from independent living to assisted living to a complete nursing home would be allowed if this is passed. The boutique hotel would a use that permits short-term overnight stays with no more than 50 rentable rooms or suites. And then in addition to those 50 rentable rooms or suites, there would be 12 rooms which may be detached in individual buildings with one-room suites. So we'll also get into a little bit detail on the size of those structures coming up later in the presentation. So other retail uses should be limited to restaurants, places, food and beverage sales, such as bakery, cheese, ice cream, candy. You're not allowed to have a drive-up window here. Flowers, gifts, cash, gifts, cards, and related sundries, apparel, jewelry, arts, and crafts, and other uses as deemed appropriate by the city. No, we're gonna keep our comments for later. We're also gonna try to hold applause, no applause during this presentation. We're trying to have want to keep some order here. Outdoor displays, so no outdoor display or outdoor dining shall exceed 2,500 square feet or 50% of the area of each retail restaurant use to which it is accessory, whichever is less. And then any other permitted principal use not permitted is prohibited. So now we've talked through everything that can go on this piece of property if this zoning is passed. So the development standards, so they've also published development standards. So there's a schedule here. So we're going to talk about minimum building footprints or maximum building footprints for all buildings in the sub areas, and then maximum building footprints of paved surface coverage and minimum green space. So they have percentages so the building footprint is the outside of the building. Everything in there is the building footprint. Then they're talking about maximum building footprint and then maximum green space, or minimum green space here. And then obviously you'll see that this is the first time that KLMUD 3 comes in. That's going to be all green space. It's going to be 100% green space. It's the lake. So they're not going to be building in the lake if this passes. So then there's two other items here. So the maximum building footprint and paved surface coverage so that calculation excludes pedestrian walkways, trails, ancillary recreational facilities such as gazebos, sitting areas, patios, viewing areas, etc. And then it says for the minimum green space that the green space may include, so the green space calculation to get to that 50% may include the pedestrian walkways, trails, and ancillary recreation facilities such as gazebos, sitting areas, patios, viewing areas, etc. So now we're going to get into development standards. So these are the standards which, if this passes, that they'll develop off of. And now we're going to talk about the single-family detached homes. The minimum dwelling area of those will be 2,000 square feet, so it's a decent-sized house. The maximum building height will be 35 feet for the single-family dwellings that are detached. For the single-family dwellings that are attached, so the townhomes, those will be a minimum dwelling living area of 1,600 square feet and a maximum building height of 45 feet in sub-area A and 35 feet in sub-area B. And then the multifamily dwellings, which is a condo, could include a condo or an apartment building. The minimum dwelling area would be 900 square feet in subarea A and 1,300 square feet in subarea B, with a maximum height in subarea A of 55 feet and a maximum height in subarea B of 35 feet. Also to note that this zoning would change the density, the allowable density on the piece of property, and it states that the maximum residential density for this piece of property would be 7.5 units per acre. So another couple footnotes, it says that building heights shall be measured from the highest point of the natural grade surrounding the building at the time of construction. And then the senior living facility, whether dwelling units are in independent or assisted living or beds in a nursing facility, shall be considered as units determined by the maximum density permitted. And then there's a third footprint that if any multiple family dwellings are constructed in subarea B of KLMUD1, the setback for both buildings and parking from the eastern property line should be 200 feet. So now we're continuing through the development standards on KLMUD2, which is on the north side of the property where the hotel and winery would be or could be if this passes. So the maximum building footprint would be 14,000 square feet. The maximum building floor area, so that would be all of the area inside the building, would be 32,000 square feet. The maximum floor area of the hotel would be 19,000 square feet. And then additional retail uses. The maximum total floor area of the additional retail uses is 14,000 square feet. And the maximum floor area of any single tenant or owner-occupied space, including the restaurants, would be 2,000 square feet. So, and then maximum building height in that area would be 45 feet. So one note here, there's two footnotes actually. So 4A, which is the hotel square footage, not included in that 19,000 square feet, is an additional 1,500 square feet of floor area that is permitted for each detached individual hotel room or suite up to a maximum of 12 such rental rooms that would be permitted. So what that's saying is he could have 12 detached suites away from the hotel in addition to the hotel, 1,500 square foot each. And then again, it's saying that the building height is going to be measured from the highest point of natural grade surrounding the building when construction's commenced. So development standards again. So now we're talking of building and parking setback requirements. So the minimum building setback requirements from the property is 40 feet. So it has to be at least 40 feet away from the property. All construction needs to be 40 feet away from the property lines. And the minimum surface parking setbacks from the boundaries for above ground is 30 feet in subsection A, 40 feet in subsection B, and 20 feet in KLMUD2. So it also says that no structure or parking shall encroach into a required setback. A building with multifamily dwellings shall be set back a minimum of 200 feet from the southern property line. So if you have a building, an apartment building, or the condo has to be at least 200 square feet away from the property line. And then if any multifamily dwellings are included in subarea B, the minimum building and parking setback from the eastern boundary should also be 200 feet. So now we're going to get into off-street parking and landscaping. So it says that off-street parking shall be provided as required, and that's referencing the city's code on off-street parking. And then the allowance for shared parking, the Planning Commission may approve a site plan with a reduction in the number of parking spaces required when considered the hours of operation of use, the overlap in parking demand, different adjacent uses, and the operating characteristics of the specific proposed plan. And then for landscaping, it also refers back to Solon City Code for landscaping, and it says, for the purposes of this chapter, when applying the general requirements of the city's code, green space may include vineyards, pedestrian ways, trails, ancillary recreational facilities, such as gazebos, sitting areas, patios, viewing areas, etc. Then it goes in and it says, parking area landscape, any surface lots containing at least 50 spaces with a width of at least 100 feet shall set aside 5% of that parking area's green space. So it's saying any big parking spot has to have at least 5% green space is what that says. And then for the district buffer, all areas between the property lines and the minimum setbacks along the perimeter of the zone shall be landscaped with vegetation, mounds, fences, and walls, individually or in combination, so any combination or individual items of all of them, to achieve a full screen buffer to a minimum height of 5 feet within 2 years of installation. So it's saying within 2 years of building and installing the buffer, they have to achieve a 5-foot height of that vegetation, which is right about here. I claim to be 5'9", so I want to say it's right about here. Then there's also an area for signs. So signs shall be subject to, again, they're referencing city code here versus, and as modified for wall signs for the commercial buildings shall not exceed 1 square foot for each linear foot of the building. So it's saying if you have a building that's 30 feet, you can't have a sign on that that's more than 30 square feet. And then additional signs internal to the property may be considered as part of a comprehensive sign plan, which shall be submitted and approved to the Planning Commission at the time of site plan, pursuant to the city's code. I think this is my last slide before I hand it off to Bud. So this is procedures, so they talk about procedures with this, saying that the site plan review for all new construction and new uses within this district are subject to review to 1291.02, which is the city's existing site plan review of non-residential and multifamily residential structures and uses of property. So it's saying that all Planning Commission review and city review would follow that section of the code. And last but not least, conflict. And it says where the conflict between the provisions of this chapter, so all the slides I just read all of you, and other provisions in the zoning code, that this chapter shall govern those conflicts. So we're going to calm down here for a second, everyone. So that's my last slide. Again, I know it was a little dry. I wanted to walk through. I think it's important to understand, for everyone to understand what the petition said and what would be allowed and not allowed. These are the words of the developer. So just want to thank you for bearing with me during that really boring presentation. Again, the purpose is strictly informative. I'm going to now hand it off. So like I said at the onset, I invited the developer to have an opportunity to speak. I reached out when I was planning this to the developer and the residents for rezoning and said, I want to do a town hall. It's important for people to know what's going on in the city. Do you guys want 10 minutes to talk? You guys can each have 10 minutes. You can say whatever you want about the zoning. The developer declined, but the residents for rezoning, reasonable zoning, accepted. So they put together a presentation. So now I'm going to hand it off to Bud Thomas.
Thanks, Jeremy. Whoops. Okay, again, thank you, Jeremy. We appreciate that very informative, factual presentation. My attempt here is to also be incredibly factual and to spend a little bit of time explaining why no on 110 is so important. There's a couple things, even on this opening slide, the two operative words in my mind are residents and reasonable. We're all residents that are part of this political action committee. We're not a corporation. We're not a company. We're not someone that's trying to do something other than above board. We are residents. We live in Solon. We bought houses in Solon, and we're attempting to protect that investment. The other one is reasonable. We are reasonable people. We want to come across as being reasonable. We want to make sure that what we are attempting to convey is that what the developer is trying to do is not reasonable. You can't take a property that is zoned for 1 acre residential property and turn it into a mixed-use development and call that reasonable. As a matter of fact, it's unreasonable. And so if you leave here tonight with only one thing, just remember that no matter what the developer says in the newspaper, in his glossy papers, or in his ads, is everything you heard before is a right that this individual has. So apartments, townhouses, a winery, bar, entertainment center. Basically, there's nothing that he didn't put in this zoning use that he or some other developer could ultimately put in place. So if you hear nothing else, you have to vote no to stop somebody from buying residential property and turning it into a playground for themselves. So who are we? Who are the residents for reasonable zoning? We're residents who want to protect residential zoning. We're residents who support the city's master plan. And each of these points has a following slide. We're residents who value the ecosystem and want to protect the Chagrin Valley watershed. We're residents who believe that City Council and the mayor, not a developer, should have oversight of developers. And we're residents who don't want to spend millions on infrastructure to support an ill-advised development. So you saw Jeremy's presentation. Today, this property, the 103-acre property, is zoned single-family, 1-acre lots. That's what was behind my house. I live in Thornberry. When I bought my house 11 years ago, there's people that bought and built their houses within the last few months. And that's what the property was zoned when they purchased the land and bought their houses. The proposed, as Jeremy has gone through very, very articulately, is mixed use. It's 7 times the current residences per acre. Doesn't matter if the builder says they're not going to do that. They have the right to do that. That's the important element here. It's the rights that he is attempting to put through this mixed zoning use. 4-story apartment, townhomes, an entertainment center, wine bar. So do you want to go from kind of this to this? I don't, and I think there's probably a lot of residents in Solon that would agree with me. So the master plan. Today, the master plan has separate residential and commercial parcels throughout the city. There's portions that are primarily zoned for residential and portions that are primarily zoned for manufacturing and commercial and retail within the city. The city of Solon determines what is to be constructed, developed, and put on those lands. The proposed is a high-density mixture of retail property, commercial, rental property, and a wine bar in the middle. The developer gets to make the rules, potentially unchecked by the city. That's the part that really scares me a lot, is it's potentially unchecked. They have the right to kind of do what they want to do. And again, whether or not that ends up being what happens is not relevant. It's what could happen. The ecosystem. Today, it's a quiet tree-lined property, a 20-acre lot with vital floodplain considerations. If you lived in Solon back in, I think it was 2006, when we had the 100-year flood, these properties make a difference. You need green space. You need water places for the water to go. Several dams were constructed to maintain the current water flow and potential flood demands. The proposed significantly reduces green space. I thought one of the more entertaining components of the green space on the actual zoning was that 100% of the lake is green space. No kidding. Of course 100% of the lake is green space. It's always green space, unless you're going to put a house on stilts in the lake. So there's a risk of polluting the watershed that's vital to Chagrin Valley. There's high-density apartments and townhomes. And there's a high strain on the infrastructure the environment, and the school system. So I know one of the claims that the developer is making is that it's going to be a financial boon to the city. Well, if you put as many residences, 7.5 per acre, which is allowed, into this property, that's a lot of additional children going into the school system. Don't know what that costs, but it's not zero. The City of Solon oversight. Today, there's a strict planning committee and city council oversight of any new and revised projects. The proposed, this developer, and any developer for that matter, would make the rules. The potential risk of limited oversight by the City Planning Commission on portions of the plan, in my mind, it's the fox guarding the hen house. And again, don't know, I'm sure this Mr. Harris is a perfectly nice gentleman, but at the end of the day, it's the rights that he is getting by changing this to a mixed-use zoning. And last two slides. It's an ill-advised plan. Substantial strain on the infrastructure, the schools, the roads, the sewer, the safety forces. It changes our community beyond recognition. I'll go back to one of my opening points. When you bought your houses and you had a property next to you, you probably thought that that property would stay residential because that's what it was zoned. Is it fair to allow someone to come in, spend a relatively nominal amount of money for a 103-acre property that is zoned 1 acre residential and then turn it in to whatever that person desires? That doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. The proposed retail will potentially draw patrons away from downtown Solon and conflicts with the city's well-researched master plan. The city has a master plan. It's been in place for a long time. It specifically focuses on where residential should be and where non-residential should be. That's an important aspect. It's separating those two and making sure that they're both accessible, but not necessarily integrated. The developer's never done this before. He's got a lack of experience in this type of development. And the developer who claims to want to partner with residents of the city, who doesn't follow established protocol, sues the city and makes the city pay his legal bills, I don't know about you, but that's not my kind of partner. And if that's the actions that this gentleman has taken to date, what will happen next? That piece makes me very, very nervous as well, because all of that is factual. He went around the city's established protocol, and he is attempting to make the city pay his legal bills to go to the Supreme Court. Again, back to my fair comment. It doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't seem right. So conclusion, vote no on issue 110. Help us maintain residential zoning. Help us keep out high-density mixed-use zoning. Help us protect the environment. Help us avoid another tax increase to pay for increased services. Help us allow our elected leaders' voices to be heard on development. And help us spread the word on this particular issue. I think what happens a lot of times is when people see pictures of a pretty winery with mountains in the background, by the way, which aren't there, it looks nice. But when you get under the covers, it's not so nice. So I implore you, reach out to your neighbors, get everyone to come out and vote. November 6th, no on issue 110. It's very important, not only to Ward 3, but it's important to the entire city, because there's no reason to believe that this couldn't be your ward next. I don't know how many folks in the room are Ward 3 versus other places, but this is not a Ward 3 issue. This is a citywide issue that we need to make sure that we fight in a very, very significant way. So thank you very much for your attention.
All right, so that concludes the prepared presentations. We're going to attempt to take questions from the audience here. Again, I want this done in a very civil manner. If there's cheering and everything in between, we're not going to be able to carry on here. But again, I want to reiterate, Bud's presentation here is he's not speaking on my behalf, he's not speaking on the city's behalf, on the mayor's behalf, on council's behalf. That's on the PAC's behalf. So I want to make sure everyone knows that. And the purpose really was just for me, my presentation was just to get facts out about what the rezoning means. So at this point, if you have questions, there's a microphone in the back. Dylan, you want to go first? State your name, first, last name, and address. Dylan, you can go first.
Dylan Davis. I live at 38040 McDowell Drive. Just a couple of quick questions. Is there a site plan for this at all right now that's been submitted to the city?
That has been submitted to the city.
Yes.
Someone from the planning commission or the mayor, Bill? No.
Nothing.
No.
Okay, nothing. And then two, have there been any studies done on any of the impact that Bud was discussing earlier about traffic, sanitation, police, all those kind of things?
I can't answer that question. So that's,
I mean, would
I don't
anyone
think
that-
any studies have been submitted to the city for this project.
would that be done by the city or would that be done by the developer?
That
I
would
don't
be
even-
done by the developer.
Okay, those are my only questions.
Bill, I might look for you for answers here, because Mackey's sitting in the back. Yeah, step up to the microphone, name and address, please.
My name is Rich D'Ambrosia. I live at 37129 Deer Run. And I can't speak for myself, and I know you have also. And congratulations on being my councilman.
Thank
Your first slide showed an amendment by petition.
Yes,
And that petition was everything you presented,
yes,
and people signed that.
yes. So can I jump in and then, I can talk about the process for a second, or do you want to
Oh, go
ask?
ahead.
So it's a legal process, it's allowable, so it's nothing that is against the law. So he started down the route of presenting to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission had some questions and concerns that the city does not currently have a multi-use zoning in the code. So the Planning Commission wanted to develop that code before considering this proposal. And at that point, because he was going to present this rezoning to the city, he didn't show back up to a planning commission meeting, so he went out throughout the community and had to get signatures for a petition.
How
So
many?
10% of the last governor's voting tally.
In the city of Solon?
Yeah,
or
it
the
was
state?
like 1,000 people,
1,000 people.
740 people.
And those signatures were verified by our law director? Or?
So those signatures were verified by the county board of elections.
Okay.
So he had over that amount. He had almost 900, I want to say. I don't have the numbers
Okay.
readily available.
And does this amendment change the voting for the city at all as to the people, whether they want this or not only in Ward 3 or citywide, or is there more to it than what I've seen in the presentation?
So I don't think so, but I will post, there's a cover page. There's a cover page. So I will post this, and the city will, I think the city has posted this. So we'll repost it. This is going to be on the city's website. I'll post it on Nextdoor. I know there's a lot of people that are on Nextdoor. We'll put it on Facebook for people to see. But essentially, my slides were taken directly from this. So it's my understanding, and no one ever asked me to sign the petition, but the petitioners had this, because this is the petition, when they were asking for people to sign.
And how did this amendment get to the Ohio Supreme Court?
I'm going to hand this off to the mayor.
Yeah, I've kind of figured that.
So we require 3 readings, and if the 3 readings were actually read, the developer wouldn't have had a chance to get this on the ballot. So after the first reading, the developer chose to sue us in the Supreme Court
And
to get it on the ballot.
And as mayor and a law director, can you invoke our home rule in regards to this?
Absolutely.
Well, then what are you waiting for?
I mean, that's, and if we get challenged, we'll fight it.
Thank you.
With outside counsel, I hope?
Yes. I've already made that decision.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else want to step to the microphone?
Hi, I'm Michelle Lyon. I live at 30597 Stillwater Lane, not Ward 3, sorry. I have a question. I wrote it down because if the developer gets the property rezoned to multi-use, what's to prevent him from flipping the property and then having another developer come in and put a Walmart there,
Well, you couldn't put a Walmart there because there's size restrictions on the commercial
or
space.
anything. I mean, like,
So I don't believe that there's nothing from preventing him from selling it now. There's nothing preventing him from selling it at any point. But there are restrictions. If it passes and he sells it, the restrictions are what can go on there is everything
that was pretty open-ended, so.
Well, but you couldn't put a Walmart because I think it said the maximum square footage of any single commercial space is 2,000 square feet.
But he could make everything apartment buildings,
No, they're only in the districts where
the-
multi-family houses are
which
allowed,
was like,
which is
east,
to
west,
the
and south.
west side of the property, the lake, west side of the lake.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mike?
Mike Cook, 6494 Glen Allen Avenue. Jeremy, what would the process be if, in theory, this were to fail and the developer wanted to come back with a revised plan? Because in the literature that we're getting in our mailboxes or on our chairs today, it's presented as, yes, it's a good plan, vote yes, and it's a good plan, vote no, and, this evil plan is going to happen, even though it's the same developer would own it and would do, the yes plan, the no plan. Would there be a third way if, again, if it fails, say, hey, I want to come back, come with maybe a scaled-down plan that would be tolerable to the people of Ward 3 and to the city? How would that work?
So if it fails, he can write up new zoning, he could work with the planning commission so he'll always be able to, if it fails, he'll always be able to put single-family residential on 1 acre lots there. But if he wants to do something more than that, he could go through the planning commission or go through initiative petition again. Oh,
A point on the size, so that it does call for a building at 32,000 square feet, a hotel at 19,000 square feet, and a winery, restaurants, and spa combined at 30,000 square feet. So, again, fairly sizable properties there.
yeah, but to that point, it also says the maximum floor area of any single tenant is 2,000 square feet. So I just trying to make sure but the building sizes are 14, sizable, but the one tenant is 2,000.
Akhil Chowk says 6565 Dorset Lane, Thornbury. Could you explain what is the absolute way of making it not go forward on two levels? One is the number of no's needed has to be exclusively Ward 3 people can deny it, or it has to be citywide no to repel this process?
So the city in its charter has a ward veto built in. So and this has happened in the past in Solon, if it passes in the city and fails in Ward 3, it would not get implemented. Obviously, if it fails citywide, it would not get implemented. But if it passes it's got to pass in the city, according to the city's charter, in the city and in the ward.
And what is the density of Ward 3? How many votes you need from Ward 3 to put it to rest?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people don't go out and vote anymore.
No, but in general,
Right.
I'm just
So
hypothetical.
in general, I think 1,000, 1,200 voters in Ward 3. There's like 2,400 registered voters. There's 2,400 registered voters, plus or minus 10%. I have not looked at the registers lately, but when I ran for city council, there were like 2,400 registered voters, and just over 1,000 voted.
So if Ward 3 says no, there is no other coming back to this project, or is there any other way people can, enter again?
Hold on. Yeah, Bill, you want to talk? Yeah.
No, the absolute certain way to make sure that this does not go forward is it should fail citywide.
Sure.
Because if it doesn't pass in Ward 3, they will sue the city again, and you're taking a chance that the Supreme Court will rule against us once again. So if you want to, make sure
Sure.
that it does not happen, it has to fail citywide.
No. You can sue on anything. There's a possibility. Yeah. No. Well,
All right.
you're going to have. So I think the question is there a problem with the charter, right? So is that the question that we want to talk?
The question is, then there is no veto from Ward 3.
Well, so in the past, there have been issues that have passed the city.
It's no.
But-
You're saying that you can sue on it.
You can sue on anything.
There is no
Sir, you can sue on anything. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. I can't speak for him. I can't speak for him. So anyone can sue on anything. I don't. The only way to absolutely make sure it doesn't get implemented is if it fails the whole city. Sir, he could always sue the city.
My name is James Orris. I live at 7648 White Oak Drive. I've been looking at the plans here, and I got a question in general. Is under the current zoning, I'm assuming city services would take care of residential housing there. But would city services also, if this zoning passes, would city services also have to go in there, like in the fall for like leaf pickup, garbage pickup? I mean, would city services have to work inside that multi-purpose property?
I believe, and Mayor, correct me, if it's a public city street, then the city has to plow and pick up garbage and pick up leaves and do the same thing on these streets as would happen on any other street in the city.
Plus, with any commercial development,
Hold on.
development agreement that's entered into. So with any commercial development, there'd be a subsequent development agreement that would cover all these issues.
Okay, my name's Roger Drugas. I live on Alsace Court. That's part of Thornberry Development.
Can you provide your address just?
39820 Alsace Court.
Thank you.
Now, apparently you've done a good job of informing us and unbiased information on what's going on here. But at our last meeting, which is primarily Thornberry, you stated that you and all the councilmen are against this. Why don't you put that in writing on next door on the internet and put this out to the people here that you're all
Yeah.
against it?
Mr. Douglas, this is a city-sponsored event, so it's got to be
fine.
neutral. So we're staying neutral at this event. So what comes out will come out. This is a very neutral event. Mr. Gordon,
Good evening, Stan Gordon. First of all, there were
address, please.
34500 Sherwood Drive, Solon, Ohio. There were 787 people that signed the petition on behalf of the developer. Going back some time ago, we had a project called the Coral Project. Mayor Kraus was then the councilman. We had the Fountains Project, and Mayor Kraus was then the councilman. And now we have this project. We also had in between there, we had a project going up at the corner of Somm and Miles. Somewhere along the line, the city bubbled a few things. It cost the city, I believe, Mayor Kraus, if I'm incorrect, correct me, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, and the city lost. Is that correct, in court?
Stan,
Okay.
can we stick
I'm
on
going
topic
to
here?
a very
I don't
important-
want to go off subject, so if you have questions on this, we
Well,
prefer to
this
keep
is
it to this.
pertaining to a development here that's going to cost us dearly if we don't really prepare ourselves. I'm looking around the room, and I'm humbly looking around the room, and I'm going to ask, how many people are here in Ward 1? How many people are here in Ward 2?
Stan.
How many? This is very important for everybody to hear this. I've got to tell everybody in the room. I put my money where my mouth was in every one of those projects to fight it. And if the people here in the room don't activate everybody in every ward to knock this out completely, we'll have a nightmare in our hands. In the Napa Valley area, there were 52 accidents and some fatalities from the drinking from the winery. This is a very important issue. We've got to be prepared. We've got to stand together, and we got to get our friends to vote in every single ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Stan. No, hey, no clapping, please. Please, I don't want to I don't want this to get out of hand. No clapping. We're just trying to. Mrs. Mattia, do you want to?
I'm not ready yet.
Okay. Next question, please.
Okay, my name is Leanne Spacek. I live in Ward 5,
Address, please.
31850 Farm Drive off Cannon Road. Do you have signs that we can, vote no?
You'll have to
Put them some.
You can talk to Bud after the meeting on this.
To get them Thank you.
So if
Got
you want
signs?
to, you could talk to Bud after the meeting on this. Next question, please.
My name is Jason Stream, 6580 Dorset Lane in Thornbury. What is the city's responsibility or oversight over building of the access road going onto the Dorset Lane?
The city's responsibility. So I'm not going to speak on the plan, but so it's my understanding that there is a piece of land, so to give everyone background, there's a piece of land in the Thornbury subdivision off of Dorset that is owned, I believe, someone from the Homeowners Association, is it owned by the Homeowners Association? It's owned by Thornbury. There is an easement. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer, but I do not know what is or is not allowed with that easement, with the agreement of the landowner and that piece of property. I'm sure there's a lawyer needs to talk to it, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to pretend to be one.
So the city has no responsibility over the road,
Well, there is no road there right now.
the proposed road.
I mean, if there is a road and it goes in and it's a city public road, we would have to maintain that road. But there's no road there right now, so it's all hypothetical. Sorry to not have a specific answer for you there. Any other questions? Oh, here comes someone. Hold on, here you can talk.
Walk back there.
Yeah, I got you.
I did have a question for whoever could answer it. What happens to the underground parking if we have an underground lake under our city, that we're a water problem here that all of us have experienced one way or another? Underground parking to me is just ditches the whole idea, because you can't have underground parking when you can't put anything underground.
What?
That's not,
Just, Marilyn brings up a good point. So everything that talks about the city's requirements, our requirements are nothing compared to what would happen with respect to there are state requirements involved in this. ODNR oversees all dams. This is it's a Class 2 dam, which potentially, with development, could be a Class 1 dam. I'm very familiar with this because I worked for 10 years fixing the Briar Hill Lake, which had a Class 1 dam, which has the effect of having the potential to lose life, whether it's downstream. So the dam presents a great challenge, a great problem, and ODNR took a look at this, I think, 2 months ago, without anything on it. So ODNR would have a lot to say, and they undergo an extensive review process for any dams and anything that's done to the dams. There's all various things that approach the dams. There's spillways, and there's all various technical issues that ODNR has oversight over, and nothing could be done without their oversight. They work in conjunction with the Ohio EPA. And then probably the most stringent guidelines are with what's called the Army Corps of Engineers, which provides the federal regulations. We deal with them a lot because Solon is a swamp, so everything we do involves wetlands. And so we know the Army Corps. They're the toughest group to deal with, and probably for good reason, because they don't provide permitting unless everything is clean with the wetlands, that all of the wetlands, and I think the wetlands here are three which are very dangerous and difficult wetlands. And so everything would have to be mitigated, and I won't get through all the complications because there's a lot of complications with mitigating wetlands. But this would have to be, it's a very lengthy process with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have projects throughout the community that Army Corps deals with 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years, reviewing the mitigation of the wetlands and all the permitting processes. So you are correct, Marilyn. It's a very difficult process with the entire, whether it's the wetlands or whether it's the dam or the spillways, and there's a whole area of woodlands also involved in this, so.
One more?
Yes, it's a comment for all of us. Some of you see me on TV every now and then because I do come to city council. I urge all of you to come more often, and some of this stuff might not happen. But in any case, I want you all to know that we are under the gun with this home rule thing. There's lawyers on the city council. I know some of you are lawyers here, but we have just been, what is the word I want? A nice word. By the Supreme Court of Ohio, and our home rule all over the state is under siege, and I don't want us to be fooled by this. We need to take control of our own city. We will all work together. I know there's people from all of the wards here tonight. We don't need to take account. They're all represented. And this is not just a Ward 3 thing, but we have to have cooperation from our council and the leadership, from all of you. Each ward, everybody, you've got to work very hard. This is not easy. Thank you.
Thank you. We got someone. I'll bring it here.
Hi, my name's Steve Dehar, 7060 Longview Drive. My questions to, I guess, the zoning, head of zoning is, how does the language in what's being proposed here compare to the rest of the language that's in the Solon zoning code? Is it typical, or is it very loose and lax compared to what we would normally have?
Is Mackey still here? He left. Bill, do you know? Because I have numbers. Here. This is Bill Mazer. He's on the Planning Commission. Stand up. They want to see you.
I think the point that was made is that if this passes, the city has no control over anything in there. They control it. Does that answer your question?
Not really. Yeah, that part I understood, but under the restrictions that they've put in themselves, I'm looking at worst case, that it passes,
So I think I got your question. So one of the things was the maximum height, right?
Yeah.
So some buildings, they said, were 35 feet height. So that is the same as our zoning code says today, right? But some of the townhomes, they said, could be 45 feet. So that's 10 feet higher. And I think one of them, I want to make sure I'm right before I speak. One of them said 55. Thank you. Someone was taking notes. So that's obviously 20 feet higher. And then additionally, there's other things in there that may be a little bit more loose with like the parking or the signs may be a little bit more loose than current code. I have not memorized, and I do not want to memorize the city building code.
But the general
some is
scope
the same
is
and
that
some
it's-
is different.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
No, yeah. So this new zoning, this multi-use zoning is a new thing for the city too. Hi, Sonia.
Hi. So Sonia Patel, 6575 Dorset Lane. There's a lot of rumors that the land or like the proposed plan is not even possible. Can someone from planning just address that? Like what they want to put on this site, like knowing what you know about the land and the lake and the water and the dam and everything else. Like, is this even feasible, possible? Like the picture they're painting, can it even happen?
So I guess, I can't take a position this evening. All I can say is that the passage is the easiest part. It's a very difficult site, and a lot of it is not just the city requirements and the city regulations I talked a little bit about. That just begins the process for ODNR, which is the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, because they control all dams. So the fixing of Briar Hill, I got on council in 2001, and I think we commenced the Briar Hill Dam fixing in 12. So that was an 11-year project to fix that dam. This is even more complex because it's a 25-acre lake with a large dam and a large spillway. So, and that's just from the state of Ohio. Even the more complex and difficult issues revolve around the federal government with the Army Corps of Engineers, because they're responsible for looking at wetlands and the mitigation and the delineation of the wetlands on all of our lands and all of our projects. And we work with them, directly. So, and these are projects that take many years because, and I won't get into all the details, but when you mitigate wetlands, if you need to do that, you have to purchase credits on the wetlands, and the credits have to be from a certain area. So we're in the Chagrin watershed. It's a large area, and it's a large watershed. We have the Chagrin watershed and the Aurora watershed. A lot of the wetland mitigation has to be done within the watershed. There may not be enough wetland mitigation to be able to accomplish that. So these are things that the city deals with, but these are a lot of outside agencies that get involved, and they have the oversight over all of that.
So studies need to get done before, and that's all part. So that's an important note that I think you bring up, Sonia. So if this does pass, they still have to follow laws and regulations, right? They still have to follow general building codes. They have to follow EPA and ODNR and Army Corps of Engineers. They have to follow these processes. So if this passes, they still have to follow regular laws and regulations. So it doesn't change that point.
Yeah, Jeremy, obviously Bud Thomas, 37905 Flanders Drive.
And I don't know how many more questions there are. I was hoping to limit it to an hour and a half. We're a little bit over that, but can we say like 5 more questions?
Yeah. So I guess
after Bud, we'll say 5 after Bud.
My only ask here is don't be distracted by things that might or might not happen. The key is voting this issue down. So whether it's possible,
come on.
whether it's possible that the environment won't allow it, whether it's possible that the access road won't be built, whether it's possible that the traffic will be okay, is irrelevant. The issue is the mixed-use zoning that we do not have in our city today that, if this passes, would be allowed. There was an article in today's Solon Times that the city has formed a commission to study mixed-use development. That's what needs to happen. Reasonable elected professionals need to study the issue and determine what mixed use, if any, is going to be appropriate for Solon, not someone who has bought a piece of residential property and wants to change it. Please do not be distracted by the environmental or any other distractions. Vote the issue down.
Thank you. Next, Murat.
Yeah, Maher Atwa, live 37860 Flanders Drive. Just a couple of comments. One is the traffic. I mean, you cannot even think about 43 coming into Thornbury and Bainbridge. This cannot support the traffic. So you need to vote it down on that only. And we cannot allow Thornbury to be just pass-through traffic to go from one side to the other side of this multi-use. The other thing is the veto on Ward 3. And again, some people mentioned that we need to make sure it's citywide, and we do, because if the city votes it yes and Ward 3 votes it no, I'm sure they will go to the Supreme Court and try to make sure that's unconstitutional. So we want to make sure we connect to everybody we know in Solon, your friends, your kids' friends, and make sure they vote no and they understand the language. Otherwise, it will not be too late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. So I think that was 5, so we have 4 more. I'm going to start a countdown.
Hi, Pat Highland on Aberdeen Lane in Solon.
What's the number, Pat?
36680.
Thank you.
I think I'm preaching to the choir, but I think 2 things everybody should remember about what we're dealing with here. Did this developer ask the Supreme Court to declare our ward veto on zoning unconstitutional?
That was listed.
Did he ask them to do that originally? Not how they ruled, but he asked them.
I'm going to hand it over to my counterpart, who's a lawyer.
Yes, they did ask for it to be held unconstitutional. The Supreme Court did not rule on that issue.
Okay. So this gentleman wants to, anybody in Ward 3, and I think anybody in Solon should realize, this man wants to take away your right to vote what goes on in your city. That's a wonderful neighbor to have. Question two. Did the Supreme Court rule that we have to pay his legal fees?
Yes.
Does anybody know what he's asking for?
107.
$107,000. You're going to be paying $107,000 to pay for all this. That's a wonderful neighbor to have. Just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Pat. All right, we've got 3 more.
Okay, Ward 4, my name's John Shavari, 6060 Liberty Road. There are a lot of people here. Many of us have opinions. Just note one thing on the handout you received. The developer is having a session similar to this on Sunday, October 7th. Let's all show up. Let's all go there. Everybody, go to the developers and listen to what the developer has to say.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, he wants you to RSVP, but I don't think it's necessary. Let's all go there.
Thank you. Two more. Ed Suit, former Councilman Ed Suit.
Hi, Ed Suit, 36385 Churchill Drive, Solon, Ohio. I want to go at this at a different way. Today, several articles appeared in the Solon Times, and apparently the developer has a plan that they show in the Solon Times that does not include an apartment building and does not include senior housing. It is important to remember you are not voting on that plan. You are voting on a rezoning, and everything that Councilman Zelwyn showed you that's a permitted use, that's what you're voting on. Just because their plan doesn't show an apartment building doesn't mean there won't be an apartment building. They can flip this property after it's rezoned, and you can have somebody else come in and build whatever is permitted in that particular zone. The fact of the matter is, if they don't want to put an apartment building and senior housing on their lot, and they want to be transparent, they want to demonstrate their integrity, they'll withdraw this rezoning request, and they'll come forward to the city with what they actually do want to put on the property. Let there be no mistake. They've hired a gentleman, Mr. Malamed, who makes his living trying to influence campaigns for issues and elections. And what they handed out tonight I found very interesting, because you see, on their plan, they have grass on their lots. On our plan, on the plan under current zoning, our lots are just white. Not only that, they show 88 lots. They show 88 lots under current zoning. Our planning director is quoted as saying that the most you could get under current zoning is 40 lots, okay? Even under current zoning, they have to comply with wetlands, riparian setbacks, topography, the same thing that this developer would have to. In order to ensure the fact that this is defeated and to really limit the possibility of any future litigation, this whole city has to vote against it, not just Ward 3, the whole city.
Thank you. And someone reminded me that we started at 7:30, so I haven't been talking as long as I thought. So yeah, it feels like I've been talking for 3 hours, but I apparently have another 15 minutes to hit that hour-and-a-half mark.
Hello, my name's Dan Luciano, 37900 Flanders Drive. It is very heartening to see all you people out here tonight, my fellow citizens, okay? It's great to see the politicians here, but the person that is missing, we know who. He had an opportunity to talk to us. Well, he's afraid of the people. We want to hear from him. I don't have to go to his property to hear his plan. This is the people's house. This is our place. I would have liked to have seen him. It would have meant a great deal.
He was invited, sir?
I know he was,
Okay.
and I wish he had made the effort to come here tonight to talk to us.
And thank you.
My name is Tony Pizzino. I live in Lakeview Drive in Solon. We put down the development there on Solon Road 2 times by getting the people out to vote. We went door to door, and we put out signs. We went into every community to get this done. It only got through that way. Now, if you are a citizen, it's time you got up and moved and knocked your neighbor's door too, not just a handful. We had only a handful of people working on that project. And that handful brought the project down twice, because 2 times, and Suit knows about it, 2 times they've tried to rezone that area, and both times it went down because the neighbors got together and did their job. Now, you know, we like to say, okay, you do it, let George do it. George is here tonight. You all have to get out and talk to your neighbors and outside of your own community.
Thank you, sir. All right.
I would just like to ask the mayor and the city council if we can have a petition to have the state put the whole petition on the ballot so the people of Solon can see what they're voting on, as opposed to 3 lines amending our zoning ordinance. That's not full disclosure.
I agree with you. I think the Board of Elections has already made that.
Well, we should petition or do something about it, because that's not fair. That is not the truth. And the people have a right to know what they're voting on, and that's not substantial enough. And I'm sure you agreed, and all these people in here would agree. There's something wrong with that, and it should be addressed either by our law department, the mayor, our council, and send it right to the Secretary of State and the county.
I completely agree with you, sir.
Thanks. Thanks, Bob. Yeah. Anyone else? Going once? Oh, one last question of the night.
Okay, I'm a person that loves facts, and we're all here to hear facts. Oh, Jackie Calavita, 5717 Westminster Drive in Ward 5. Getting back to the facts, the developer's making statements about $4 million revenue going to the schools. Can anybody give me, because I'm a numbers person, can anybody give me that calculation, what it's based on, and where they came up from with it? And the other question is, we all know that there haven't been any environmental studies. How can the developers in the petition specify the green space? They don't even know what they can do, where they can do it.
So, thank you. So that's the last question of the night. But Jackie, so I don't know. We can't speak on how the developer came up. You can go to his open house October 7th on his property. You can ask him that question. He said that people will be there to answer those questions, so he can answer that. As far as green space, regardless, I think, of what happens, those were the minimum green space allowances, is how I read the zoning code. So in closing, just want to thank everyone for coming out. It was quite the showing. Sorry about the air conditioning in the room. If anyone wants copies of my presentation, it will be posted. And if anyone has questions for Bud, he is going to be over here at the table. Thank you.